Welcome to another edition of Ramblings Around the Kitchen Table. Rabbi Andrew and Rebbetzin Kelly. We're going to be doing a couple of Psalms today, so get your cup of coffee and let's get talking about the Word. Hi, good morning, Rebbetzin.
Good morning. Boker Tov. All right. There's a message. The Lord took me to a couple of different places today, but sometimes He does that, and there's a two-part message, so you need both of them to put them together. This was two messages confirming each other. So the Lord's driving home something, and it's a focus on a particular idea, not two that are complementary. So I thought it was kind of interesting. I'm going to read them first, and then we'll go over where they are, just to keep things flowing a little bit. So the first thing the Lord took me to was, this was Psalm 76, verse 7, but I'm not going to go over the exact psalm right now. I'm just going to quickly read it. So, you are fearsome. When once you are angry, who can stand in your presence? You pronounce sentence from heaven. The earth grows silent with fear. When Elohim arises to judge, to save all the humble of the earth. So that was 7-8 in 76. But then he took me to Psalm 7, and he took me to sorry, let me get this right. I think it's 6 and 7 here.
Rise, O Lord.
Hold on. Don't look it up. Just listen, because it's important. Let's see, where is it? So now we're at 7 in Psalm 7. May the assembly of the peoples surround you. May you return to rule over them from on high. Jehovah, who dispenses judgment to the peoples, judge me. Jehovah, according to my righteousness and as my integrity deserves. Let the evil of the wicked come to an end and establish the righteous. So there's this a sense of timing, and that passage, in verse 6, rise up, Jehovah, in your anger, arouse yourself against the fury of my foes. So again, there's this idea of righteous anger and the fear that should happen when the Lord is angry. But the righteous.
How's it reading? Read the verse again in the CGB.
Which one?
The one that you just read, verse 6. Right.
Rise up, Jehovah, in your anger. Arouse yourself against the fury of my foes. So that's. Yeah. Again, the verses kind of line up because it has, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's in that range in both passages. And this idea in Psalm 76, again, when once you are angry, and we've gone over this before. Psalm 7 in verse 11 says, Elohim is a righteous judge, a God whose anger is present every day. So there's this idea of the Lord's anger, but it's righteous anger. And the righteous of the earth, those who align themselves with Jehovah, it's awe. Yes, there's the fear of the Lord is wisdom, because the righteous understand that although he is merciful, the anger will come. You know, don't push it. Don't keep stepping on that boundary that the Lord put there and kicking it around and taking liberties and taking chances that maybe the Lord won't strike me this time. So the righteous have a different kind of, it's a deep, deep reverence and respect. But in both Psalms, there's a call for the Lord to let his anger arise. And to me, it was such an interesting concept. You know, let your anger arise on behalf of the righteous. This idea of, you know, let the evil of the wicked come to an end and establish the righteous. You know, it in both of these Psalms, there's an outcry to humble the arrogant, I guess is what I'm looking for, or this idea of, and it brought me right away to even those who've been beheaded for the sake of Yeshua, right? We see them crying out to the Lord, and they have a righteous anger. Like, how long are we waiting for you, Lord, to pay back for what they did to us? Like, we're going to sit here waiting. And it stunned me thinking about it, right? These people are already in heaven. They're sitting there with the Lord, and yet they still have this pain in their hearts and this. And then I thought it has something to do with what we used to call it the economy of God, like what the values are. Like, gold doesn't mean anything to the Lord. He paves the streets with it, right? So when we say God's economy, well, what's the currency and what's the things of value, right? And it's this, you know, obedience and righteousness and all of that, right?
Well, let me just make a point here.
Go ahead, please.
Because the ones that got their heads cut off are preaching the gospel, they're in heaven. I always get this question of the rabbi, like, what's going to happen when I die? Well, we know the prophets are in heaven. We know the patriarchs are in heaven. We know the ones that get killed for preaching Messiah are in heaven. Other people are sleeping. Because Abraham said, I'm going to go sleep with my ancestors. But he's there because Yeshua tells us about in Luke. Oh, I was just making a point there. But the other point that you put here in Psalm 7, verse 9, the evil of the wicked come to an end, but establish the righteousness. You know, it's where we were before Trump became president. We're praying this, like, because there's so much evil. I mean, there's so evil around the world, but there's so much here. They're emboldened, and we were praying this. The evil is going to stop, Lord. And he did put a pause on it when he allowed Trump to be president.
Yeah, I think many believers, those who voted for Trump, you know, especially in the 2016, there was some contention among believers whether Trump was anointed or whether he was, quote unquote, righteous enough to vote him in, because of his past and his very secular image. So there was this, you know, and then all of his divorces and all of that. But then when they saw throughout his presidency that, you know, he was encouraging prayer and he was encouraging, you know, to Christians, it meant something when he said, this is going to be the first year in decades. I want everybody to say Merry Christmas. It's okay to say it. You don't have to say Happy Holidays, and, you know, let's get back to normal. And from that launched the Reawaken America tour, where everybody was, you know, praising the Lord and wanting for Trump. So they had this combination of believers standing behind Trump, realizing, okay, well, it's not what I thought. He's really letting us, he's opening doors for us that were closed, or they appeared closed, right? Because we know no door can close that Jehovah can't open, you know.
Right. Oh, it's like, in 2016, he wasn't for God. Trump wasn't for God, but he wasn't against God. Where the Democrats were against God, they were against God.
Right, and
Trump won us over, won people over because
yeah,
I was concerned about voting for a guy who's been divorced a couple times like that, and he never proclaimed God beforehand, but he wasn't stopping anybody from proclaiming God. So that's what.
Well, he was actually encouraging people. You can go back to normal, and what he said was he saw, mind you, he's not a young guy. Even in 2016, he's not a young guy. And he saw that when the people who worship God were silenced and were kicked out of places and were shut down, he saw he saw everything, the culture of America just take a nosedive, and and not only that, but the productivity, and he realizes, like, well, these believers have a work ethic and they're not lazy, and so he put two and two together. I mean, even Hawking's the ultimate, celebrated atheist, when he was interviewed about, what do you do?
Stephen Hawking.
And he said, well, to be honest with you, if I'm going to choose where would I like to live, he goes, and I look across all the cultures and different places, yeah, it's much better living where the Christians are. I'll tell you that much. And so he admits that without admitting God. It's like a sideways, entry. But Trump, even whatever in a fallen state, could see that as soon as the believers were cut down and silenced and stomped out, the culture took a nosedive that even he couldn't tolerate.
So we look at verse number 9 again. Psalm 7, verse number 9 says, "Oh, let the evil of the wicked come to an end, but establish the righteous."
Right. That was the part that got me too. Same thing.
For righteous Elohim tries the hearts and minds. Okay, so I just want to bring that part.
Yeah. No, that's where I was going with it. Where the call is to establish the righteous. And can you what is the word for establish there? Because I know sometimes the English translation it'll use a word, but the Hebrew word is different than the one you thought, So what does it mean to establish the righteous?
1 second, please. To establish is this word here. Cool.
Strong's H3559. Coon.
It means to be firm, be stable, be established, be set up, be established, be fixed. To make ready, prepare, direct toward moral sense, range, order.
Okay, so there's this idea there of having a firm base. In other words, you're not on the run, you're not. It's like the difference between living in a stone or wooden house versus a tent. A tent you can pick up and leave, and and a tent could be blown over by a strong enough wind,
Huffing up. Put your house down.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down, right?
So this
Where
is
this is established, like dig a foundation and get ready. So if there is any resistance, you're still going to stand. And what I was thinking about was it's not about worshiping Trump, but what he's being used by the Lord to do, where in 2016, a lot of people were caught off guard and they weren't quite ready and they didn't really understand what was going on. But in 2024, the purpose, if the believers have any wisdom at all, ever since the election results came in and Trump was reelected, what the believers were supposed to do is grab that opportunity, and they were supposed to be ready to run and go and do. That's what they were supposed to do. And I think a lot of them were, but not enough, not everyone. They're slowly waking up that this is real, and they're wasting, they're burning daylight. They're not fully understanding. We have a window of time and opportunity, and what are you supposed to be doing with it? Well, to me, Trump is being used like that old Greek poem, he was a colossus striding among us, that where Trump is just this giant, like you think of those like Jason and the Argonaut movies, and this giant stone statue coming to life and striding through, I'm used to all those old movies, right? And that's the way the enemy and the Democrats view Trump, where no matter what they do, they can shoot their little arrows and it doesn't knock him down. And, and if they linger too much trying to engage him in battle, right, his giant foot will come and stamp and squash them, or, then they come up with a great idea. They're going to try to wrap something around his Achilles heel and make him trip and fall, but he doesn't, it doesn't work, right? Well, why is that? Is it because Trump is holier than thou? Of course not, but the Lord is using him to almost like hold the gates open for the righteous to take advantage, to go in and build and dig. And so this whole thing I know it's so much, but it's the idea that the Lord is allowing a time right now for the righteous to establish, dig foundations while you have the time, build something strong while you have the time, because the war will come and you have an opportunity right now. And what do we see, right? The unrighteous, everything's crumbling around them. They're falling apart. They're losing support. The Lord is uncovering all their money laundering schemes, and their fountains of money are being cut off, and they're getting more and more upset and violent because they don't have any coping skills. And, this whole thing, in Minnesota is, we're told it's just the tip of the iceberg, that this money laundering pipeline into terrorism and all of this, American taxpayers, federal and state, have been robbed of billions of dollars, right? Well, why are we still standing? Because the Lord did not forget the founders of this nation. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that they wanted a place where they could worship the Lord in spirit and in truth and according to the word. And the Lord thought that was a great idea. And he totally agreed with it. Like he says to Shlomo, I agree with your prayer. That was awesome. So their prayers were answered. And
but we have to go back to
right. And I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. So now we have this where the evil is all around us, like what was in the Psalm, right? The evil has to come to an end, and the Lord's exposing it all at such a rate that the evil, they usually try to cover their tracks and, bury things and distract you. You didn't see anything. They try all those games, right? But none of it's working now. And they're getting super frustrated and they're falling apart at the seams. They're coming unglued. And that's giving their weakness is giving us an opportunity where those who love the Lord, those who fear the Lord, those who obey the Lord, are being given this opportunity. But I don't think everyone's awake to what's going on. They're getting, and like you pointed out at several conversations that we had, there's a distraction, there's sideshows going on where we need to focus on digging those foundations and building something solid while those doors are open. And that's where I get to establish the righteous,
Well, let's pause there for a second. So we have to get straight with God.
Right.
Because there are levels of the law. Okay.
Levels of observance.
Well, you get stoned to death if you commit adultery, but you don't get stoned to death if you rob something. You have to pay back 120%, and you become a slave. So we have to establish ourselves as a righteous nation again. We're not doing that, and that's why the Lord's letting us flounder, because we're not establishing ourselves as a righteous nation. We got the Somalis here, and they're not righteous people; they're animals. But Obama brought them here. God allowed it. So why is he allowing it? We should be going there and hey, the guy who threw the Quran on the ground. He brought the fight to them. Is anybody else bringing a fight? Is anybody studying the Torah? Go ahead.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing, some people don't even realize they're caught up in something so much bigger. What I'm hearing from a lot of Christian believers that have podcasts is there's a lot of them digging into the Tanakh and the Torah more than I've never heard so many people quoting Devarim in my life. And these are Christians just quoting it. So they're being drawn by the Ruach towards something, and I don't think they're aware of it yet. Some of them are, but I don't think they're totally aware of what's going on with themselves, within themselves. And I just want to point out that, again, I don't know why, but the Lord brought me to Psalm 7 and Psalm 76. And I know there's a meaning probably even in the numbers there, but there's this in, oh boy, in verse 5, what I saw in 76, Psalm 76 verse 5, where it says, the bravest have been stripped of their spoil. And I thought, that's what's going on. Again, this is a prayer for the Lord to rise up in his righteous anger, because the psalmist writes, because when you're angry, nobody can stand. When you're angry, the earth holds its breath and stays perfectly still in fear. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that righteous anger from you, Lord. You're the judge. You know best. But I'm calling for you to judge in your righteousness. And when you see what these crazy people are doing, I know, Lord, you're going to get angry. I just know it. So there's this moment. But then it says there that the bravest among the enemies, the bravest of them have been what? They've been stripped of their spoil. And that's what I see, that they've been cut off from their money. They've been cut off from their positions. They're getting indicted. They're getting arrested. They're getting thrown from their power base. they're getting their money cut off. This is all actually happening right in front of us if we just take a moment and look and see what's happening. But it isn't, we know it's not the total victory. That comes later. We're going to go through a war. There's a war and then a wedding, right? Well, the war is kicking up. And what I see here in these passages is, see, we want leaders, but we're not training up any leaders. In other words, we have an opportunity, say, for example, by the end of Trump's term, there's kids in college right now that are going to pass into the age where they can fight in battle, right? That's 20 years old, right? So there's a lot.
According to Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 1.
Yeah, so in Bamidbar 1, we find out, so in 4 years, there's a bunch of kids that are going to pass from, 18, 19 into 20. They're going to be graduating from, they have training if they're going to a good college, but there are good colleges. And I don't want to hear that there are none, because there are believers, Liberty, Hillsdale, Austin, Texas, Austin University. These are places where you get real learning. And there are probably others that I don't know the name of them, but you can send your kid to a decent school. And so they're going to be fighting age by the end of Trump's term. And if we're wise, we will make sure that these young people are trained up in the way they should go. We have an opportunity to establish, and what did we say? All these young people that are crying out to the Lord and they're getting saved, right? Well, being saved is just the beginning. You need training after that, because you get saved and the enemy comes right after you.
Need a good drill sergeant.
Yeah, and exactly. And so you need, what the body needs to do is realize that we have this window of opportunity. You don't get good candidates from the current culture. And I don't care if you are conservative. You're not ready for this fight. And what do we see? We have a lot of people who, they want to do good things, but they don't know what good is, because they're not really rooted in the word. And what happens? We elect them, they get into Washington, and we're all horrified. What happened? He was supposed to, he said he was gonna, and they get nothing done because they're not ready for the kind of warfare that goes on. The evil that's in Washington, they're in over their head because they haven't had what you just said. They haven't had boot camp for this level of warfare, this level of darkness and evil. They can't handle it. They just can't handle it. So no matter who you elect, you got to prepare people for this war before you get them in the primary.
It's like, you look at Charlie Kirk's beginning of his ministry. He wasn't really, he could speak, but he grew in understanding, and he grew in, and then same with Ben Shapiro. Very good. But we were going through this other thing. You got the city of Canada's own. They're all Jews. Jesus is a Jew, okay? The disciples, all Jews. They didn't come to start a new religion. They're still Jews, and that's what these idiots don't get. The Bible is a Jewish book. The Bible is a Jewish book, and you have to understand that. Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Luke's a Gentile, okay? But Matthew, Mark, and John, all Jews. Messiah, a Jew. He came to the house of Israel. So you have to come into that house. You have to understand that. If you're going into battle, you need to have your armor on. But the helmet of salvation is the Kohen Hagadol, the high priest. And on the front of it says Kadosh La Yehovah.
Exactly.
Holy to the Lord. So what's holiness? Well, the Torah tells you what's holy and what's not. Okay? So you can't go into battle with a paper sword. Okay, go ahead.
So what I'm getting from both of these passages is there's this cry that I think the Lord is calling the congregation to look at this. To the Ruach is leading us where there's this two sides. There's this establishing the righteous, and I really also was thinking a lot about, the time of separating. The Lord is looking for you to declare once and for all, whose side are you on? Sheep and goats are being separated. And because going into this battle, as you pointed out, if we look at Charlie and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens, right? They're all young people that were starting up around the same time.
And Schmucker.
And who?
Tucker, brilliant man, man.
Yeah, well, Tucker wasn't as young as these people at the same time.
Well, I just want to point out, he became a believer. He
around,
he didn't follow God when he was young.
But they weren't prepared. They did not stand in the battle. They got trounced in the battle. Satan managed to pull them and got them all spun around and confused, and they wound up in some kind of weird circle, in a circling firing squad, and they're shooting at people that love them, and they're so confused. That's pure. I mean, you have to see that for what it is, right? Who causes confusion? It's Satan.
The adversary, yeah.
Yeah, the adversary is the liar and the one who causes confusion. So we have to dig in and not be moved. The righteous need to be established. But you can't, unless the Lord builds the house, you can dig a foundation, but unless the Lord builds a house, it's not going to do you any good, So you're going to need to dig in for sure. But if you're trying to do it in your own strength and you think you have a great idea and you're going to do all these things, the Lord is saying, well, if you're not building that house according to the structure that I built, and I almost need to kind of make it clear, like we need to look at Torah almost like a structure made of unbreakable building materials. It's the foundation and all of the uprights that are going to hold up the house. That's Torah. You don't have that. You're living in a sandcastle, and the next big wave is just going to wash everything away. And you spent hours building this thing, and it looks gorgeous, but you're going to get washed away. You don't have the foundation, and you don't have the uprights without Torah, and that's very clear.
Well, you need to look at Matthew 7. Matthew 7, verse 21 through 23. It says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And cast out demons in your name? Perform many miracles in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.'"
Right.
These are believers. This is church believers.
Yeah.
We preach in your name. These are people that know Jesus, Messiah Yeshua. We prophesied in your name. We healed in your name. And he turns around and says, "I don't know you. He's not following the law." Because the key there is what it says in verse 21. "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter."
Yeah, I think that's an important point. That's part of your foundation stones and the uprights. Now, the walls, the roof, the window dressings, a lot of those can get damaged in a battle or whatever. But
That was Matthew 7.
As long as you have,
Psalm 7, Matthew 7, and Psalm 76.
yeah. So you can have all those things. They'll get damaged in the war, but as long as you have the foundation and the uprights, rebuilding, also the foundation and the uprights will hold firm during battle, during a basic battle, And so it's kind of exciting to me because this is a signal to me that this is what the Lord is prompting. This is what he's showing his people. Instead of getting all caught up in the nonsense of Candace Owen picking on Israel, because the Lord just laughs at her, she's not a serious person. And she has no power. And what's beautiful is now she does have millions of followers, but she's not moving the needle because the righteous are standing up in her grill. And this is a real battle, people. I know it seems kind of insignificant, or, why are we talking about this? But what you see for the first time is boldness coming from those who fear the Lord, those who study the word every day, every morning. Those people are saying, you know what, Candace, you're wrong, and we'll pray for you. Because we know, and they're saying it, we know you got turned around. We are praying for you because you used to be among us, so we know you. But you're falling down in battle, so we don't want to leave you behind, like just leave you for dead. So we're praying for you, but we are also not engaging in what you're spewing because you're getting yourself in trouble, but we don't go along with it, And they're standing up and saying, no, what she's doing is wrong. And now, even after Tucker left Fox and he started his own network, and, he's got that TCN, and he's got all these things, and he had millions and millions, and, his early interviews were getting millions of views. And so it seemed like he was going to recover from the loss of his job, and he was going to be okay, right? But he started actually losing viewership and losing money, and that's the Lord. That's the Lord. Because first he claims he got saved, but then in 2 interviews after that, he claims he read the Bible and he didn't understand a word of it.
Well, that's why you need discipleship.
Well,
go to bgmctv.org. bgmctv.org. And
well, what I'm more looking at is spiritually, the Ruach helps people understand the word. You cannot, and Yeshua talks about this, the way that you see clearly, the reason why, Kepha, you know who I am, the reason you know that I am Mashiach, you didn't do that on your own. There was no man that did that. That was the Lord opening your eyes to it.
Father in heaven.
And so there's a spiritual component that people should be very alarmed when somebody says they're a believer, but they don't understand that the Bible is like a bunch of gibberish to them and it's not their guide. You have to say, okay, there's something wrong there. That should not be happening. The Ruach, no matter how young of a believer you are, you're an infant believer. The Ruach will take you to a scripture that you can understand at your age, at your level of just new believer. There's going to be portions of the scripture that are highlighted in your spirit and they answer some need or question. And he's saying he read the whole Bible and none of it made any sense to him. And I'm like, well, that should be your first warning. Like, where's the Ruach? Like, what is he became a Christian? How? What's going on there? That should be alarming to anyone listening.
It's the 4 seats. It's the 4 seats because, Yeshua said, some fell upon the road, some fell upon the rock, and some fell on the tangled up in the world, and some fell on good ground. So, that's why discipleship is so very important. Because, most people, they can't read it. Because they need to be shown, just like a child needs to be shown how to tie his shoes, how to brush his teeth.
And what's really scary about Tucker is he's been around excellent evangelists and people who are skilled in apologetics. And when somebody shows him the word and tells him what the truth is, he argues with them. He doesn't receive it. He's like, he's got, a blockhead. You can't reach him. And I've seen him in interviews and in a public sort of arena where I have access to watch him. And anybody that presents the Bible to him, he immediately rejects the Bible. Anything else they talk about, he's chit-chatting and smiling. And the minute they bring up a word or they quote a scripture, he goes into fight mode. And I'm like, okay, dude is not saved.
Well, you need to slap him. You gotta get your sword out and cut him down. That's what people. It's not time to be nice. It's time to cut. Tucker wants to just cut down the Bible. Cut him down.
Right, but what I'm talking about is if you're trying to win him over to the Lord or get him to see the truth in the Word, it's inside of him. There's a barrier inside of him. He does not receive any scriptures as truth, so therefore he's not saved. I'm not talking about his arguments don't touch the believers because the believers are standing on the rock and he can't do that. He doesn't have the power to do it, but he's not saved. So where am I going with this? So we have these public figures who went into the fray, and Candace and Tucker, claiming, that they're saved and they're believers and, but we see the truth. They couldn't handle what the enemy was throwing at them. And now they're just spinning around and they're all out of control. And now they're speaking against the word of God. And, we see this. And I'm not laughing at it. I think it's horribly tragic. But I want the body to be awake and look at what's happening in front of you. So we have to be careful who we put any trust in. They could say a lot of things. It doesn't mean it's true. What does the scripture say? Test all things. It's not a suggestion. It's instructions on how to move forward. Test all things. And so I'm just looking at this with excitement because what the Lord is speaking to his people right now through the word is he's waiting for the righteous to walk through the doors that he has opened. Because remember, what he opens, no one could shut. And so the enemy thinks that they're going to shut us down, silence us, destroy us is what they really want to do. And they admit it out loud. I'm not making that up. They just say it plainly. And now they're screaming, even though they've been breaking federal laws, state laws, international laws, human rights, laws. They've been breaking all these laws, right? Mostly the law of God. They're in lawlessness, right? But they're getting caught. They're getting arrested. They're getting, subpoenaed. And what do? They start screaming that you're the one who's breaking the law, like we're coming after you, but notice they keep talking about it, but they can't do it. They're held back. They're not indicting anyone, They're screaming, oh, we're going to impeach Trump. And every time they try, they get squashed, silenced. It's going nowhere. That's supernatural because if they could, they would arrest us all, And they're just screeching because as demons will do, and you've been there when demons have been exorcised and the screeching that demons do when they get thrown out, it's a horrific sound. It's very disturbing, by the way. If you've never been in the presence of demons being cast out, it's pretty horrific sound.
Let's wrap this up and let's wrap this up and let's turn to Matthew chapter 16, verse 26 and 27. Matthew chapter 16, verse 26 and 27. What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world forfeits his soul. What will the man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels. Will then repay every man according to his deeds.
That should terrify anyone, getting paid for every man for according to his deeds. And, there are some people, and even in Revelation, there's, for let the wicked keep being wicked and let the righteous continue being righteous, and don't worry about any of the details, the Lord will handle it, At some point, the wicked are just going to continue being wicked. And it's not your fault and it's not your problem, because you're among the righteous and you serve the one true King. And while praying for those people, don't destroy yourself trying to rescue someone who's not having it. Pearls before swine. There is a limit. There is a limit. And you don't have to even go after them and punish them. You don't, because the Lord will get them. If you're not in a seat where you can go and get them and whatever, put them in prison or whatever, don't worry about it. The Lord is keeping perfect score and he knows who's on his side. So you just keep doing what you need to do. You keep doing what I sent you there to do. And when you are called upon to speak or to act, that's the plan of the Lord for your life unfolding. So you have a purpose for a certain time and a place, and you'll know, because it'll be all on you, and you're going to know it from the Ruach, from the Word. You're going to be sure in what you're doing. But don't keep looking around and going, yeah, but look at those people, they're bad too. Oh, look at those people. That anxiety is pointless and it's a waste of your energy. The Lord sees them. And what I'm seeing is the rage of the enemy, the screaming of the enemy, but it's being held back right now. But I think we're pretty sure from prophecy that at some point the evil ones are going to do a lot of destruction. There's going to be a tremendous, hell on earth kind of things. But we need to not worry about that. We need to stay focused. And what am I supposed to be doing right now? And again, we've got these young adults who are crying out for the Lord, screaming for the Lord. Anybody who's introducing them to Yeshua, you don't even have to do anything. You just say Yeshua's name and they're like, yeah, that's what I want. Well, that's supernatural. No human can do that. They're seeking the Lord. They're seeking truth. They're sick of the lies and the darkness and, all the attacks, and they're sick of it, these young people. So our job is to again, establish, foundations and uprights to prepare for these people, because these young people are going to be of age, of fighting age, by the time Trump's term ends. And you can count on that. If we provide what's needed for these young people, they will be ready. They won't be knocked down, spun around, all out of control. And, let the word, the living word, it's a double-edged sword. It gets into you. It cuts away the rotten stuff. And these kids need the word. And we're seeing it even with adults. People just going out and buying a Bible and start reading it, and they're stunned what's in there because they've been lied to. Oh, you know what it says in the Bible? They never actually read it. And probably because they weren't ready to hear it either. But I will mention that. There's a time where, people just aren't ready to hear the truth. And then they go back and read it at another point in their life and they receive it. That's between them and the Lord and their appointed time, Anyway, I'm just, establish the righteous, and we're supposed to be calling on the righteous judge in his anger, not ours. Your anger is pointless. Your anger is can be very harmful and toxic. But his anger is pure and righteous, and we need for him to hear our voices, that we're all in unity, like we're sick of this darkness. We're not going to compromise with it, and that's a whole other discussion. Compromising and being tolerant. We're not being tolerant of the darkness anymore, Lord. We are not tolerant. We are intolerant, and we need your help to squash the darkness.
This is finished with Psalm 7, verse number 6. Arise, O Lord, in your anger. Lift up yourself against the rage of my adversaries. And arouse yourself for me. You have listened to the ramblings of the kitchen table with Reverend Kelly and Rabbi Andrew. Shalom, everybody.